Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. My name is Scott Woods. I'm the product manager at Hawk Ridge for our complete technical communication suite. If you don't know what products are in there, I'll briefly talk about those at the very end of the presentation. But today, this is the 3D Solution Spotlight part of the technical communication suite. It's actually the last one of this series. So the last 3 Fridays we've been presenting, going over Composer, model-based definitions, inspection, and then today is all about rendering. So we're going to be talking about Composer, PhotoView 360, the built-in renderer for SolidWorks, and SolidWorks Visualize. And so the title of this is Which Rendering Tool is Best, and then comparing the different rendering options for SolidWorks. Now, which rendering tool is best is a little bit misleading because it really depends on your situation. So all 3 of these products have their intended use, and they're all great products, and so it really depends on what you're looking for, and that's really the premises of what we're talking about today. Okay, so which one is better? So it's not a matter of what is best, but what is right. So what's right for the specific task at hand. So when you look at these 3 renderings, you'll see the first one is from Composer. I put this at a 1-second render. It's actually less than that, and the setup in Composer is super fast. So Composer is really made to be technical, and so it's a technical renderer, and it's so it brings in the models from SolidWorks. It's separate installation from SolidWorks. You do your setup. We'll show that today, and then you push it out. And each image you push out from Composer, it just takes just a moment to push out because it's not technically rendering. I don't like this term, WYSIWYG, but it's really fitting for this application because what you see on screen is exactly what you get in that image. And so there's no guesswork. There's no rendering out and be like, it's a little dark, or the background's not quite right, or the reflections, or whatever. What you see on screen is what you get. You just specify the quality, the DPI and the resolution for that output, and it's super fast. So we'll show that. The second one, PhotoView 360, it takes a little bit longer to create that rendering. The setup time is about the same as it is for Composer, and when we're talking about Visualize, it's about the same as well. So these are all very comparable for how much time you're spending in the application. These times here is the time when you click render, how long you have to wait to get that image saved out. And so for PhotoView 360, this rendering here is a 4-minute render, and you look at it and it looks very nice. I wouldn't necessarily call it photorealism. Depends on who you ask and what their expectations are. But for me, PhotoView 360 is almost photorealism. It's not quite there, but really it's intended to get a fast render out of SolidWorks. So it's really controlled by the engineering department, whoever has access to SolidWorks. This is SolidWorks Pro and Premium, and if you own that, you own PhotoView 360, and you can quickly throw on materials, push out an image. Again, that's done by the engineering department because you have to have SolidWorks in order to do it. And then the last one that rendering takes just about 4 minutes, or it took 8 minutes in this case, so it's all scalable, so it's about twice as long as it takes to render out in PhotoView 360, but you're going to get a photorealism image. And we'll really talk more about comparing those two here in a little bit with some more examples. But basically, it pushes that out in one shot, and you get your image that's photorealistic, where in PhotoView 360, you might have to work hours in the software to get something that's almost photorealistic because you're going back and forth saying, we're going to make some tweaks. And so it's not really intended for that, which might not make a whole lot of sense right now, but we'll definitely cover that here in a little bit. But before we move on past this, I just want to let everybody know that this is open for questions. So in the GoToMeeting, if you type in any questions, I'll get those. As I'm going through, I don't have a wingman today, so I might not be able to get to questions as we're going through, but at the very end, I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. So if you have any questions during the presentation, type them in, we'll get them at the end, or save them for the end and we'll get them there as well. So, okay, so let's take a look at these examples. So basically, the three we have here, the visualize one's actually a little different. I got that other one here, but just take a look at these three. Composer, very technical. You see the lines, and you even look at the transitions in the reflections here. And again, in Composer, you have many different options for output. This is just one of them, where this is actually more of a vectorized 2D art. It's a vector image. It's saved as a JPEG, so it has been rasterized, but originally it was vector. Then we get PhotoView 360, which is, it's very nice. It's very, you get the shininess, you get the actual reflections, the real reflections from the environment, which you don't get in Composer, just because it's a different kind of rendering tool. And it's very clean, and it's fast. But I look at this, and it doesn't scream photorealism to me. It screams really nice 3D rendering. And then we get more into visualize, and then you look at this, and it's looking more photorealistic. And this is actually a pretty quick rendering I just pushed out, so it's not even nearly to the stage as it could be, which I'll show some examples from visualize. And that's really the difference between the three as far as the output. And we'll talk about exactly what the intentions are. So not just the output, but why you would use each one of these. Okay, so let's just start off with Composer, and we'll compare these three. So with Composer, kind of the pros and cons here is it's a very simple interface. It is separate from SolidWorks, and it is a different kind of interface than SolidWorks. So if you're a major SolidWorks user and you go into Composer, the interface is going to be different, and it might be confusing because it's a different kind of application. It's also for an entirely different purpose. So Composer is made to push out those renderings as fast as possible, and they're very technical. And so if you are trying to create photorealism marketing images, Composer is not necessarily the tool that's best for that job. It's better to create like assembly instructions, marketing, operation manuals, operation maintenance, and assembly manuals, things like that, things that are very technical. You want high quality images, not necessarily photorealistic. One benefit of using Composer for creating renderings is SolidWorks is not required at all. And so you could have Composer not even own SolidWorks and be able to import the SolidWorks models, or any other models for that matter, into the software, and then create these really nice images, pulling the rendering out of the engineering department. So if currently your engineering department is doing the renderings because they have access to PhotoView 360 with SolidWorks, and you're like, well, engineering shouldn't actually be spending their time on that, then this is an option to get that process out of engineering into like marketing or tech pubs or something. In my opinion, Composer is really designed for that tech pubs department and a bit of marketing as well. And there's many different styles available, which we'll get into. Okay, and then next we're going to compare, and by the way, I'm going to jump into the software. I just want to talk about each one first. Next one is PhotoView 360. So this is the add-in for SolidWorks. So if you're familiar with SolidWorks, you're already familiar with this interface, and we'll show this as well. It's fast rendering. It's not seconds, but it is minutes, depending on your machine. Of course, you get a screaming fast machine, you might be able to push out a very highly detailed image in just a matter of seconds. With this machine I have here, not so much, and I'll explain that also. What our options are there in a bit as far as hardware goes. It's semi-photorealistic to photorealistic. So if you see any of the, I know SolidWorks every year holds like a rendering contest, and they have people using PhotoView 360 to actually produce high quality renderings, and some of them, they look darn near photorealistic. Some of them even could possibly pass as photo. So it technically can get to that level, but how much time are you willing to spend to get it to that level? So, you're in SolidWorks, you're playing materials, lighting, and you render out, and you're like, the lighting is not quite right, so you add some more light sources, you render out. You could be doing that all day until you get something that looks really solid, but you're spending all day doing that. When the whole idea of PhotoView 360 is to produce something quick and easy and nice looking, and so it's really designed for doing like products on a table with like a white background. Very nice looking, very clean, but quick. And that's the idea behind it. It's not really intended for interior design. So if you're going to be rendering like the inside of a house or like a ballroom or a kitchen or a bathroom or something like that, it's going to lack in those fields just because of the lighting sources available and the environmental effects and everything like that. You can do it. We'll show some examples of it, but really Visualize would be the better tool for that kind of rendering. And then lastly, SOLIDWORKS is required because it is an add-in for SOLIDWORKS. Okay, then we get into Visualize. So Visualize, oh, you know what? I don't think I mentioned up here. I just went back to PhotoView 360. It's made for the engineer because it's built into SOLIDWORKS. And then Visualize is marketing. So, composers like TechPubs, PhotoView 360 is engineering, Visualize is marketing. Now, any of these groups can use all three tools. It's just kind of what they were intended for. So it lends itself better to those applications. It's a very simple interface, and it is a lot like SOLIDWORKS, a lot like PhotoView 360, where you can drag and drop images or appearances and sceneries and stuff like that. And so it's much the same way. However, it's much easier to create a photorealistic rendering. So it uses the engine behind it is iRay. It's a photorealistic rendering engine, and it utilizes both your CPU and your GPU on your computer, as well as other computers in the network. And that's with the Pro version, where you can actually tap into those other resources, which I'll show as well. We can steal those resources, pull it in, and then get renderings much, much faster that way, and then photorealistic renderings at that. It is a separate install from SOLIDWORKS, so we can pull it out of the engineering department. You can install that on any machine. Anybody can use it, and they don't have to know how to use SOLIDWORKS whatsoever. It's great. It's great for both showcasing products with white backgrounds, just like PhotoView 360, but it's also great for interior design. And so the Pro bundle, or the Pro version of Visualize, so Visualize Professional, has custom lighting. So you can put cam lights and light sources anywhere in a room to really illuminate that room and bring light to dark areas and just make it look absolutely photorealistic. And if you're designing something like the interior of a room, you're like, should I put a light over here? Well, you throw a light in there and you can test it before you actually do it in real life. Again, SOLIDWORKS is not required because it's a separate install. And I'd say that the downfall in this guy is the renderings can be timely depending on what you're looking for. It's photorealistic, and so you might want an animation of that or a 3D rotatable model, and that might take a few hours on a rendering class station to push out. So it really is intended for that rendering, not just that, hey, I'm going to output a real quick image to send to somebody for approval. That would be PhotoView 360. So that's really the differences between the three options. Okay, so let's jump into the software. And the first one, we'll just go in the same order as I did in the presentation PowerPoint there, and we'll show a composer. So all I've done here is I've imported the model and then applied some different rendering schemes to it to show all the different options. And these aren't even all the options. I mean, we can keep going. And I'm going to go ahead and recreate these just so you guys can see how these are done. But you'll see like this last one here, it's hodgepodge of a little bit of everything. So we got some, some like shiny surfaces. We have some like tech illustration sort of blades going on. We got this silhouette rendering of the body, and this guy here is like a see-through silhouette sort of appearance, also with the shadow on the ground. So this is the custom rendering mode. So if I go to this guy here, and let's just start creating these. So let's create a new view. There's my model, and then let's say that I wanted to change the rendering style. So right now I'm on smooth, and then there's smooth outline. So you kind of get that look where it's smooth, but you have the outline. Again, this tool, Composer, is not intended for photorealism, and so trying to get there with this tool is just not going to happen. What it is intended for is creating this real technical looking renderings in a short amount of time. So like right here, I just switched that to flat technical. I still have some shine on there. I can control that shine just with an environmental effect if I want it on or not. And so I can get it looking very like technical. That ground shadow is also just toggle. We can toggle on as well. And so something like this, we get a real technical but a shaded regions of that. If I go to silhouette, you get the same thing, but more like what people expect when they look at kind of technical drawings, 2D drawings. We can control the line thicknesses too. So if I just select, I'll just select a few components so we can see the difference here. And we just change the width of those lines. We can even change the color of those lines depending on, whatever you want to see, and you can really use that to isolate and identify things and get it looking exactly how you want. Then we can get into even more technical ways of doing this, where if I were to jump into my tech illustration workshop, I can go ahead and I could snap, and I'm going to create a vectorized version of this model, 2D vectorized version, and I can say, hey, I want shadows. Yeah, and we'll use, let's do smart outlines. And so when I create this, and it just takes a second to go through, and right now it's creating that 2D vectorized image. And it's going to have our outline lines, it's going to have a shadow, and I really like that shadows. And as soon as it's done here, I'll show you, I'll explain exactly what that is. Let me get something like this. And we have, let me just go into the properties here for this guy. And you'll see that, like, see the shadow around it, we can turn that off. There's a background, so I can enable that or disable that. There's also the ability to, I just want to turn off that border there, which is right here. There it is, little checkbox. So then we get something more like this. It's two-dimensional, it's vectorized, but we also have like these cool shadows going on. So when you look at the model, we got these areas of shadow, and when you compare this to something like this, you'll see like this is, line drawings. This is line drawings with a bit of shadow to it. And then we could also do a version of this with, shaded regions and things like that. So again, a very technical output. All right, so let's now jump into, oh, you know what I should have done? I skipped a little step here. Let me just go ahead and push these out, because I like to show speed as well. And also keep in mind, my computer I'm running right now, it's a dual-core i7, 16 gigabytes of RAM. So I mean, it's a decent computer. I got a K1000M Quadro graphics card, and so I mean, this station, it's a laptop. It's not a bad computer, but it is, several years old. It's, kind of outdated technology, and it's not top of the line by any means. However, as you can see when I'm working in Composer, it's flawless, and we're able to render out fast. And I just want to make sure you guys understood that I'm not on like this super powerful workstation that I'm flying through this. It's really the speed of the software on a decent computer. Okay, so we got 9, so 11 renderings. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify my my resolution. So, high resolution, maybe you want to go like 600 dpi on that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to say that the quality setting is all the way up. And I'm going to say all of the views, so all of these guys here in one shot. And so 11 renderings, save that out. Oop, wrong folder. Let's go to this guy. And publications, there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and dump it into this folder here, which you can see is currently empty. Now if I navigate to that folder, see if I can do it. I didn't get it. I didn't get there in time because it rendered every single one of these in like 3 seconds. That's what I was saying. It's actually less than a second. And so it just pushes out what we did. And I can't even navigate to the folder fast enough before it's done rendering. And that's what Composer's for. It's fast, it's technical, it's clean, it's precise, it's out the door, done, forget about. Okay, so now let's get into the more very aesthetic, more aesthetically pleasing outputs. So the next one is PhotoView 360. And if you currently have SolidWorks Pro Premium and you don't know about PhotoView 360, I mean, you have access to it. So it's just an add-in you need to turn on for SolidWorks, and you're able to push out very high quality renderings directly out of the software. It does have its limitations, and that's when we run into and that's why we have to jump into visualize once we hit those. But again, this is going to be in the engineering department, so whoever has access to SolidWorks would be able to do this and then push out quick renderings. And the way it works is there's a couple ways to work within this software. is because it is built right into SolidWorks, if I right-click a part, or if I click it in the tree, I can go ahead and I can say, hey, you know what, here's the body material on this guy, and I can edit that, and then I can go and I can choose a different like metal or paint. You see on the right here, these are just options of different appearances that are with the software. And I can take this and I can drag and drop it onto the parts as well. So let me go ahead and maybe like this guy here, we'll go ahead and we'll modify it, and we'll say it's going to be, I don't know, like a high gloss red, or yellow, or something like that. And just by drag and dropping the appearances onto the model, it gives you a little color change. And by the way, this color change, when you bring the model into Composer, it's done. It's already, that color comes over as well. And so by setting this up for PhotoView 360 in SolidWorks, you're also setting it up for both Composer and for Visualize, because both those applications bring in the color of the model, and then Visualize also brings in the appearance. So it brings in the attributes of the plastic and things like that. So by doing this here in SolidWorks, we're setting the stage for those other applications, that they all work in harmony. So it's not like, hey, this is replacing that or anything like that. They are working together still. Okay, so this is how we apply the appearances within SolidWorks, or SolidWorks PhotoView 360. In PhotoView 360, we have some options here to specify, that my final rendering is going to be at maximum. It's going to be, so many pixels, and it's going to be aspect ratio. And there's a lot of options in here to really fine-tune. Out of the box, the settings are pretty solid, and so you can output a very high-quality image with little effort. Yep, and I typically recommend, if you're going to use this, to use a camera. You can create cameras inside SolidWorks, and you get a little bit better perspective and stuff like that. But for this purpose, we just want to kind of show the output. And I'm going to render this on the fly, but not yet. I want to show a little trick in Visualize, and then we'll jump back into PhotoView 360 and start the rendering. However, I also want to show how we can edit the scene. And you'll notice that the out-of-the-box scenes for PhotoView 360, on the right here, they're all like showroom style, table style, solid backgrounds, things like that, because that's really what the application is for, really where it shines. You just drag and drop this here. That doesn't mean that you can't import images and backgrounds and use the HDR image backgrounds and create like these global appearances for the environment. You can do that. However, it's just it's not really the intent here. The intent is, again, for products, showcasing it out the door fast, done in a quick amount of time. As far as the environment, I prefer to use Visualize for that, because we get more control, and it really is intended for that kind of purpose. But let's put a pin in this for 1 second, jump back to Visualize, come back and render this, because I actually want to do the Visualize rendering and the PhotoView 360 rendering at the exact same time on my computer, and I'll explain why I want to do that. Sounds like crazy talk, but there's a reason why I want to show that. Okay, so what I just did is I just switched from SolidWorks PhotoView 360 to SolidWorks Visualize. Again, this is a standalone application. It's separate from SolidWorks. You don't have to own SolidWorks. It works still with SolidWorks. And what I didn't mention yet is both Visualize and Composer can link back to the SolidWorks models. When it changes here as well. So it is associated. So this guy, we got our model, our quadcopter. And what I want to show is that when I go here, you'll see that I have what's called Boost. I got a node, which what that is I got a separate computer in my office here that I'm going to steal the power from to both operate in the user interface of Visualize. So as I'm rotating and looking at the model, it's going to be stealing the power of that machine. But then also when I tell this to render, it's also going to be stealing the power of that machine. And so it doesn't slow down the rendering that I'm also going to be doing in PhotoView 360. So I can actually do 2 renderings at the same time without hogging down all the resources on this computer. Now with that said, that slide I shown where the Composer rendering was a second, the PhotoView 360 was 4 minutes, and the Visualize rendering was 8 minutes. That was all done on this computer, not utilizing that other computer. So that was a direct one-to-one comparison. Where this other computer using, of course, the Visualize rendering is going to be much faster than 8 minutes. It's probably going to be closer to 1 or 2. Okay, so I'm going to use that. We say OK, and I'm just going to go ahead and toggle that on here. And you'll see right away it starts rendering. Here's the passes. So these are actually rendering passes. And as I rotate, it's going to update rendering passes. So it's quite impressive how it's just stealing the power from the other machine. And on a computer that I have, like this laptop, that's not a great computer by any means, I can create great renderings because I'm actually stealing the power of this rendering farm. And the other computer is quite powerful. So there's no it is stealing. There actually has grid cards in there, and it's like 64 gigs of RAM. So that machine there is very powerful. Okay, so with that said, let's set this guy up. Actually, while I'm doing this, let's switch back to the PhotoView 360, and let's start the rendering. So I'm going to go ahead and say Final Render, and then let's get this. I just want to get this moving before I go back to visualize. And there we go. All right, so it's doing its thing. There it goes. So what it's doing is it's going through, it's going to do several passes, and it's going to go through and it's going to start rendering out this image. And while that's rendering, I'm still able to work and visualize because this power boost and boost for Visualize, which you get with Visualize Pro, is utilizing other machines. So it's really not taxing at all on my current machine. So I'm doing this live over GoToMeeting, rendering out two renders, rotating this guy at photorealism. This is something my computer, can never do. I would have never done this in the past. But with that power boost and boost in conjunction with each other, which you get both with Visualize Pro, it just allows you to work faster, and it's pretty cool what you can do. All right, so now that I'm here, let's go ahead and let's switch this to appearances, and I want to change like maybe the base of the propellers or something like that. So it works much like it does with PhotoView 360, where you just, I'm looking for this guy, there we go, where you can just drag and drop materials. So very much the same way. So if that propeller, if I wanted that to be, I don't know, like red, just drag and drop that there, it's going to change all four. That's just based off of the import method that I use for appearances. Because I preset this up in SOLIDWORKS with those appearances, it knows that all four of those have the same appearance. Maybe I wanted that base to be green, and this side shell to be, I don't know, chameleon or something, whatever color that is. And then we just drag and drop, we're done. We go to the environment, and once you're happy with the appearances, so the coloring, let me just zoom out here a little bit, then we can drag and drop an environment. And the environment is, you can have a local library and then the world library. And this is pulling from the community of online library. Anything that has a little green circle next to it, I've already had downloaded. Anything that doesn't, once I use it, it would download. Let's go ahead and use something here that has already been downloaded, like German dirt road. So something like that, drag and drop it in, and then we get something like that. Okay, I want to switch back to PhotoView 360. I'm just curious where that's at this stage here. Yep, and it's going through. So I think I said that rendering was about 4 minutes. I think that was on good or better. It was on better, and I switched to maximum just now. So this rendering will take a little bit more than 4 minutes because I upped the quality. But we'll just let that keep going while we actually do it in Visualize as well. I guess one thing that's bothering me is that this guy is not on the ground, right? It's a quadcopter. So let's go ahead and let's get it off of the ground there. There's a few ways we can do that. And what I want to do is just to say, let's select the model here. I just want to go ahead and lift it off the ground. Yeah, we'll get it flying. There's also ways where you can take these propellers and give it like a movement, so they have like that movement. You can do full animation in the software, and you rotate the propellers and say, hey, there's like a motion blur, and we'll get this illusion in the image that it's actually, they're moving and flying. Also, with Composer, there's animation. You can do similar things like output a video. And then in PhotoView 360, there's also animation. So in SOLIDWORKS, you have your motion, SOLIDWORKS motion. By utilizing SOLIDWORKS motion, you can actually render out that SOLIDWORKS motion with PhotoView 360, you can also render that SolidWorks motion out with Visualize. And so there's, if you have Visualize installed, it puts a little add-in with SolidWorks. You can output it as a Visualize project, and anything you've done in your motion study, gravity, all that stuff, will actually come into Visualize, and you can render that animation out in photorealism. So again, everything has this, this symbiotic relationship with each other, and it really is what's the best tool for the current task, not which one are you going to use all the time. Okay, so with this, let's go ahead and render it. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that we want to render. I want to specify that I'm using that other computer to do the rendering. And yeah, let's, I'll save it to the desktop. Why not? And we'll start that. Okay, so this guy is just about ready to start doing the rendering. And I'm going to go ahead and let both of these do their job in the background while I jump back into the PowerPoint and kind of start wrapping it up here. But with that said, let's switch back here. I'm just curious where we're at with SolidWorks. So we're at 50, looks like 57. Nope, that's not what it is. There we go. So it looks about, yeah, about halfway there. Yeah, and it's doing its job. So I got actually quite a few cores it's using, because I have both my CPU and GPU cores, and my CPU is tethered, so it's hyper-threaded, so it's using S4 cores instead of 2. But there's my rendering going on in PhotoView 360, which is just about finished up, and then in Visualize, it's 30 seconds in. Oh, it's already complete. So because I use that other machine. So if I was just using my computer, it would take twice as long to make this rendering than it did in PhotoView 360. But because I'm using that second computer, it took 39 seconds. And so you'll see how you can just drastically cut time off by doing it that way. Because I saved it to my desktop, let's jump here to grab it, which is right there. So there's the rendering I just made out of PhotoView 360. I'm sorry, out of Visualize. And you see a little bit of shadow there. I should have probably made that shadow a little bit darker so you can really get the feeling that it's flying in the air. But I mean, 36 seconds to render that out. It's pretty outstanding. On this machine, it would have took closer to about 10 minutes. But still, it's not a whole lot of time to get a nice looking image pushed out. Here we got the one in SolidWorks, which I think is wrapping up. So it's just about 90%, and it's done. There we go. And then I can go ahead and I can let's go ahead and save that out, and I'll save it to the desktop as well. And we'll just go ahead and compare those two. So we got our PhotoView 360, then we got our Visualize rendering, to something like that between the two. So again, both very good quality renders, but let's pop back into the PowerPoint and talk a little bit about why. Okay, so that was those guys. Okay, so talking a little bit more about Composer here, it is the tool to output many renderings at the same time. And so as you see, when I went in there, it was just real easy to make what are called views in the software to say, hey, I want one that is, it's going to be shiny with color regions and, a 3D looking model. Another one that's going to look more 2D, more technical, and then you have full control over each one. This last one, I didn't really show how to do that in the software, but what you can do is per component, per part, you can choose which style you want. Basically how that works. So instead of saying, hey, globally for all the models here, we're going to have, this shaded technical drawing, you could say, hey, this part is shaded, this part is silhouette, this part is, technical styled, and then you can create these really cool outputs to really define areas of the model. It's really great for assembly instructions, so you can say, hey, the red parts are moving right now, we're assembling them, now we're going to assemble the green parts, and so on. It outputs both raster and vector publications and has video animation publications as well. It's lightweight and high performance, and that's a big one for Composer. That's a big feather in its hat, that it's lightweight, high performance. You don't need SolidWorks in order to do it. However, it depends on what you want the output to be. And then we get into PhotoView 360. And I wanted to add these two images because I did specify a couple times that it's really great for product rendering, like this quadcopter, right? This drone, it's really good for that. It also can do, interior design rendering. However, you look at these renderings; these are cool, these are nice, and they get the point across. But you don't look at this and necessarily think, oh, that's photorealistic. It's to get the idea across in a very nice rendering and in a short amount of time. That's the idea behind it. It's very good for getting concepts out. It's integrated with SolidWorks, so with that design process and you're making changes and you push it out and you're like, oh yeah, that's good. Or we need to change these parts, and so you go back into SolidWorks, you change the parts, push it out again. Okay, it looks good, and then maybe it's time now to bring into Visualize to create that very high-end rendering to really impress the clientele or whatever the audience is. Just gets those ideas out the door fast. And that's the idea behind the PhotoView 360 product. Then we get into Visualize and Visualize Pro. Now I do try to separate these two, but they do meld together, because everything in Pro is also in Standard. I'm sorry, everything in Standard's also in Pro, and then Pro has the additional features of custom lighting and 3D rotatable models and animation, which I'll show some examples here. But really, the Visualize product is for that professional, top quality image. It also has video animation publication, just like the other two, but of course, its video publication is going to be photorealism. Custom lighting controls, this one's huge. And this is a pro feature, but what it allows you to do is inside these, see this cockpit here, we have light coming through the windows. We also have lights within the fuselage, some cam lights. So you can specify lights throughout the entire interior to illuminate the interior. And that's really the idea behind custom lighting for the Pro feature, which you can create lifelike environments that way. Product design, product marketing, things like that. All right, so let's take just a quick look at some examples out of Visualize. And what I'd like to show here is some of these images. We'll just thumb through real quick. You might have already seen these. These are just marketing images from SolidWorks. But these are all Visualize. And so far, most of these have Visualize Standard. Let me find one that has Pro features. Here we go. Here's a Pro feature. So you see the spokes in the tire. They're showing movement. This image is not, there's a still image, but it shows that it's actually moving. So that's what you get from the Pro. Also, something like this, interior lighting, also from the Pro package. All right, so let's also show this guy here. So what this gives you is a rotatable 3D model. And you can put this on a website, smartphone, any kind of device. And this is another benefit of Visualize Pro, where if you want to have your product on your website as a 3D rotatable model, then Visualize is the way to go for that. And you basically, it renders out a series of like JPEG images and uses JavaScript to stitch them together. So it gives you the illusion that's a 3D model. By the way, this one just goes around like a table. You could also have it so you can rotate to the top and the bottom and look at it from 360 degrees. But it gives the illusion of a 3D model, but no special players needed in order to view it. And that's been the problem in the past, is if you put a 3D model on a website, you have to have some kind of player or plugin to view it. With this, it's just JavaScript and it's just images. So you can bypass that need for a player. So a really creative way that they've allowed 3D model rotation on websites and photorealism, which is super awesome. Okay, and last thing I want to show here is the video. So I don't know if you've seen this video. I really like this one. I think it just really illustrates the quality of the Visualize product. This is a animation. It's that Hydra Coupe off of the Captain America movie, and so I think this was actually made for the video game. This animation here, but yeah. So I mean, very high quality, custom lighting, movement, really that dynamic, emotional kind of content, and that's what Visualize is for. So if you think about it, like you got the three products, Composer, Technical, PhotoView 360, gets the idea across, out the door fast, at high quality, Visualize, stunning. And that's the differences between the three and why you'd want to use them. for that. Anyway, so we covered up these the 4 products, and if you missed the other ones, just go back. We have them on our website, so you can go back and watch the recordings. This one will be on the website as well in a little bit to watch. But basically, Composer. We talked about that a bit today for manuals, assembly instructions, things like that. Inspection, that's for FAI reports, your QC department to actually inspect the products you manufacture to. Model-based definitions, creates a PDF, a 3D model with annotations and dimensions, really good to aid in that inspection or CAM process. And then visualize, which we've talked about quite a bit today. Just wanted to throw in some extra little examples there at the end to show you guys exactly what it can do. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up to questions. So if you guys have any questions, you can type that into the GoToMeeting right now. If you have anything or any questions about, pricing or want to quote or see a demo or anything like that, contact Blaine. So Blaine W at hawkersys.com. He's my counterpart here. He's the sales manager on the for the technical communication suite. And yeah, so he can help you out or relay any questions you got to me as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just go silent for a few minutes and wait for questions to come in. And if no questions come in, we'll just shut it down in about 5 minutes here. All right, thanks, and everybody have a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. And yeah, so